on the one hand, because of the Industrial Revolution and also the much improved international order for trade, China's economy will unavoidably become the biggest economy, probably in the next 20 to 30 years. On the other hand, it's not China's path to achieve the biggest economy status will not be a straight line, because the Chinese economy has grown for more than 30 years at almost 10% a year for so long. And then a lot of structural problems have accumulated. So before China can become the world's largest economy, there will be some roadblocks and hurdles that China has to overcome. From the President of China, Mr. Xi Jinping, to the Premier, Mr. Li Keqiang, and the various ministers and think tank policy advisors, they all realize that the structural problems have to be corrected. But in order to achieve such a goal, deepening various reforms is a necessity, is the must-have condition. Otherwise, maintaining high growth for the next 10 to 20 years will be a big challenge. So this is why people like myself are very happy to see that last year at the party's third plenum, they decided to really undertake broad, far-reaching economic reforms, as well as institutional and some political reforms, because they realize that unless such reforms take place, unless they're done, otherwise it will be very difficult to maintain sustainable growth. So I'm happy to see that. Because a lot of the countries in Central Asia, even on the western side of China, or along the western border of China, many of these countries have a lot of resources. Kazakhstan, even Afghanistan and Pakistan. A lot of them have minerals, natural gas, and oil reserves. So China will need a lot of those material supply. So on the other hand, the Chinese economy as a manufacturer of many, many things is very well known. So there's a lot of complementarity between China on the one hand and the Central Asian countries and other neighboring countries. So a lot of trade can be promoted, can be done to make each country grow more. So there is some prospect. But on the other hand, we have to realize that sea transportation is still the cheapest, much cheaper. It's much cheaper to transport goods, materials, oil, and other things on the ocean than on land. So what that means is high-speed trains, roads, and so on. They can be relied on to transport goods, but they're expensive to do. So I think some collaboration and some work can be done among the Silk Road belt countries. But before all the potential can be achieved, China and other countries have to work together more to establish more free trade zones and more free trade policies. I think one major hurdle on the economic side for the Chinese economy to overcome is the big role played by the government in economic resource allocations. and in economic and financial capital allocation decision making. What I mean by that is the government agencies at all levels, from the county level to the prefectural level to the provincial level and to the central government level, they all still play a very dominating role in resource allocations and in financial capital allocations. But in order to really grow more and at a sustained growth level for a sustainably long period of time, the market has to play a much, much bigger role. So the government's role has to be reduced. So this is why at the party's Central Committee's third plenum, they decided to let the market play a more decisive role. Of course, that goal is great, but to really achieve the goal of letting the market play a decisive role, some major changes have to be made. So this is why I think the major challenge for the economy's long-term goal of growing sustainably for many, many years to come is really whether the stated reforms can actually be done successfully so that the market can really play a decisive role instead of the government agencies deciding on everything, instead of letting the market decide on most of the things. So China now needs to change the economic structure so that the growth of the Chinese economy can depend more on consumption rather than on investment, right? Then you wonder, why the Chinese economic growth model has been so dependent on investment. So what has to be done in order to reduce the dependence on investment and increase the dependence on consumption, right? So in order to make such a switch, the government has to play much less of a role in economic matters, because as long as government agencies play the main role of economic decision making, then they always like investment. So in order to change the over-dependence on investment rather than household consumption, then more economic decision power has to be given to the market. So this is why changing the roles of government agencies in economic decision making and letting the market have more say, it's so fundamentally important for changing the economic structure so that there will be more consumption-driven and less investment-driven growth going into the future.